You've done this exact thing before. Same room, same words, same moment, except that you haven't. That's déjà vu, and it's one of the strangest tricks your brain ever pulls on you. So, what's actually happening when that feeling shows up? Most people assume it's something mystical, a glitch in the matrix, a past life memory, maybe the universe sending a signal. And honestly, those explanations are a lot more fun than the real one. But the real one is genuinely fascinating because what deja vu actually tells us is something surprising about how memory works and how your brain can confidently get something completely wrong. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Deja vu is not rare. Somewhere between 60 and 70% of people report experiencing it at some point in their lives. So if you felt it, you're in good company. It tends to show up more in younger people, especially teenagers and people in their 20s, and it generally becomes less frequent as you get older. Nobody is entirely sure why that is, but the phrase itself comes from French, and it just means already seen. And that's a pretty accurate description of what it feels like. You're in a moment that's brand new, but your brain is telling you that you've been here before. The strange part isn't just the feeling, it's that you usually know the feeling is wrong at the same time you're having it. You're experiencing two contradictory things simultaneously, a strong sense of familiarity and a clear awareness that the familiarity doesn't make sense. That tension is exactly what makes it feel so weird. Now, deja vu is notoriously hard to study. It's brief, it's unpredictable, and you can't just ask someone to do it on command and then scan their brain while it happens. That said, researchers have found some clever ways to investigate it, and over the past few decades, a clearer picture has started to emerge. There are a couple of leading explanations, and the interesting thing is they're not really competing. They might both be true. The first one has to do with how your brain handles familiarity, and this is where it gets pretty interesting, so stay with me here. Your brain doesn't store and retrieve memories the way a computer does. It's not one unified system. Different parts of your brain handle different aspects of memory, and two of the most important ones for this conversation are the hippocampus and the rhinal cortex. The hippocampus is involved in forming and retrieving specific memories, the kind where you can actually recall a moment, a place, a face, and connect it to a time and context. The rhinal cortex, which sits nearby in what's called the medial temporal lobe, handles something different. It generates a sense of familiarity, that background feeling that something is known to you even before you can place why. Normally, these two systems work together without you noticing. You see a face, the familiarity signal fires, and then the hippocampus fills in the details. Oh, right, that's my neighbor. It all happens in a fraction of a second, and it feels seamless. But sometimes those two systems fall slightly out of sync. The familiarity signal fires, but the hippocampus goes looking for a matching memory and comes back empty. And that mismatch, a strong signal of familiarity with no memory to back it up, is what many researchers think produces the feeling of déjà vu. Your brain is essentially generating a false sense of recognition. It's not that you've been here before. It's that the part of your brain responsible for saying this is familiar is misfiring, and the rest of your brain is left trying to make sense of it. That's important. But there's a second explanation that adds a different layer to this. And honestly, it might be the one that resonates more with how déjà vu actually feels in the moment. This one is about timing, specifically a tiny delay in how your brain processes what you're perceiving. The idea is that sometimes a scene or a moment gets processed twice, once very briefly and below the level of your full awareness, and then again a split second later when your conscious attention catches up. By the time you're fully taking in what you're seeing, your brain has technically already processed it once, and so it registers the second pass as a repeat. You feel like you've seen this before because, in a very literal sense, your brain has already seen it, just a fraction of a second ago without you realizing it. In other words, your experience of now might already be a fraction of a second behind reality, and déjà vu might be one of the rare occasions when that gap becomes noticeable. These two explanations, the familiarity mismatch and the split-second processing delay, aren't necessarily separate things. They might be two sides of the same coin, different ways of describing what happens when the brain's timing or coordination gets slightly off. And there's actually something interesting that supports this. Deja vu tends to happen more often when people are tired, stressed, or distracted. When your brain is running on less than its best, the different systems that normally work together smoothly can start to drift out of sync. The wiring is all still there, but the coordination slips a little, and that's when these weird perceptual blips are more likely to surface. There's also a third angle on this that I personally find very fascinating, and it's a bit more philosophical. Some researchers think déjà vu might actually be a sign that your brain is doing something right. The idea is that when the familiarity signal fires without a real memory to support it, your brain recognizes the error. It detects the mismatch and flags it. And that awareness, that sense of this feels real, but I know it isn't, might be your brain's error checking system working the way it's supposed to. You're not just experiencing a glitch, you're experiencing the glitch being caught. That's why déjà vu has that distinctive double quality to it, the false familiarity and the simultaneous awareness that it's false. Both things are happening at once because your brain is both generating the error and correcting for it. That might also help explain why déjà vu is more common when you're young. Your memory systems are still fine-tuning, and as they mature, these little misfires may happen less often. So for the overwhelming majority of people, déjà vu is completely harmless. It's a brief, slightly strange moment, and then it passes. But there's one situation where it's worth knowing a little more, and I want to be clear about this so it doesn't come across as alarming, because it really isn't meant to be. In rare cases, frequent or intense déjà vu can be associated with temporal lobe epilepsy. The temporal lobe is the part of the brain that contains the hippocampus and the rhinal cortex, the exact regions involved in memory and familiarity, so it makes sense that seizure activity in that area could produce an exaggerated version of what we've been describing. People with temporal lobe epilepsy sometimes describe déjà vu as a kind of warning signal before a seizure, and it tends to come alongside other things like a strange smell, an odd taste, a rising feeling in the stomach, or a brief loss of awareness. Here's the important part though. Having déjà vu does not mean you have epilepsy. That's not how this works. Occasional brief déjà vu is just a normal brain thing that happens to most people. The only time it's worth talking to a doctor is if the episodes are happening very frequently. If they're intense or distressing, if they last longer than a few seconds, or if they come with those other unusual sensations. If it's just the occasional, wait, have I done this before? Feeling, you're fine. That's just your brain being weird for a second, which it does all the time. You've probably had that feeling dozens of times without ever knowing what was behind it. Now you do. And the next time it happens, instead of wondering if you've lived this moment in another life, you'll know it's just your brain briefly getting its wires crossed, noticing it, and sorting itself out, which is honestly kind of remarkable when you think about it. If you've had a déjà vu moment you still remember, leave it in the comments. And if you like videos that explain the weird things your brain does, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.